It's quite a different, I think many different landscapes that you brought in from the example of how Mahakali as a power gets done. But what I heard you say is when there is clarity, when there is power of conviction, the swiftness to ask because it's coming from that. But what an interesting perspective, one of the fact that you brought was the ability to hold that power. And when there is structure and when there is rules and regulations. And when my clarity or my conviction or my ability to stay course doesn't, or let's say colludes or collides with another that is different, then what happens? So taking on from, the sincerity is there in both, you cannot really doubt. The child was as much as a sincere in his own ignorance, as much as the mother, in her own ignorance, what she had to do. But when there is a collision, then the aspect of Mahakali, how does one balance it out? How does one bring in the dialoguing? Like you said, how do I choose the battles? And in choosing the battles, how do I also collaborate? Because both are very clear. Both have conviction. And coming to that aspect to you, Jothi, is that the actions of Durga, the Kali, the Mahakali, and the way of the Supreme Mother. So, what aspects, the deeper and the subtle aspects of this? Because one, yes, we talk about force. But there is so much to it than just the force, the passion, the courage. And the sincerity element of it, or what are the other elements that needs to bring in when action is needed? But what sort of action? When it's an individual versus the collective. Or not versus, let me correct that, individual and the collective. So.
Yeah. Can you speak without this?
No, we need to record.
I have the exact words from the mother to answer this question you finally said. Can I read it?
Yes, please.
I don't know, some people do not like reading quotes. But better than explaining with my own words to read from her words. Just a small paragraph only. And for human consciousness, it takes long. Here she's talking about individual attitude towards a collective or the world or society. For human consciousness, it takes long. But as you remarked just before, it is pretty. It feels like something going like this, a gesture like a tide spreading out. Tide spreading out. Very slowly for the human consciousness. Certainly, but quite implacable towards resistances and sovereignly sure of victory. That's pretty. These are mother's words, a conversation from the agenda. And with the least amount of damage, undeniably. So like a tide. Because when a tide comes, you have time to move away from it. No hurry, no fear. It's not a tsunami. This is how mother wants things to be done. This is what she adopted. Many people used to complain to her, why don't you bring the Mahakali force and get it done immediately, smash it, do it immediately, everything. She said, I can't do that because I have to prepare the base for it. Otherwise, the force is too big for the world. Then with the least amount of damage, undeniably, not to mention that what looks like damage may only be seen in the whole, a means of higher realization. There will be damages, nothing can be done without damage. Even if you walk on the floor, on the road, you very carefully, we kill a lot of germs. When you drink a glass of water, a lot of life get killed. It is impossible in the present state of human body to live without destroying other lives. Our vegetables we eat, that is also one's life. Vegetables, fruits, everything is life. So we survive by destroying other life. This is physical nature, physical law. But in the same way, when the Mahakali acts, I'm not talking about Mahakali, here she's talking about the new consciousness, which spreads like a tide, slowly. But there will be some destruction. Damage may only be seen in the whole, a means of higher realization. That damage is for higher realization. That's what she says. And about Mahakali, I would like to share one small thought here, which I read also. It is very rarely she acts. Very rarely. Like Belu was saying, only one occasion. I've also been reading Sri Aurobindo Mother's literature since I was 24. I've rarely seen any mention about them describing Mahakali's action. Very rarely, because it's a too big, huge force. They don't talk about it only very rarely in some occasion. And so that's the reason why we can't talk much about that. But I feel in the world scenario, like for example, the French Revolution, that is something I feel the action of Mahakali. Because Sri Aurobindo writes, when Mahakali acts, nothing is left untouched. Everything is touched. It is not a very focused force, it is a wide force. So you know what happened in Europe? Lot of bloodshed. So that I think is a very good example of action of Mahakali. Sri Aurobindo himself wrote an aphorism that Napoleon he saw as a god striding over Europe. So it's that. Anything more?
Can I just add
Yeah.
one or two things? There are a couple of other letters in agenda of Sat Prem really writing to mother and saying, bring your Mahakali force, bring your Mahakali force. And the troubles that he mentioned specifically, which were bothering him, were resistance, inertia, falling back into his old patterns, and every morning waking up with that old mindset that was resistant to change. So it's like, not easy. There is another letter of Sri Aurobindo where he says there are two conditions for Mahakali's force to work. One is that there has to be that calm inner being. Then this force can work. Because otherwise, if it's a lot in turmoil, the force will do so much damage that it can, have a negative rather than the positive impact that it is supposed to have for progress and transformation. And the second thing is that the person on whom, the sadhak on whom, or whether it is individually or collectively as a society, as a nation, as humanity, when we will not be looking at Mother's Mahakali force as take it otherwise, that Mother doesn't love me anymore. And she's doing this because I have been bad, or I have not done this or not done that, but rather take it as a blessing. So to whom Mother applies this Mahakali force, with whom she knows that they have that intimate connection with her, intimate relation with her, that they will see Mahakali's force also as a blessing. So for that also we have to become adhikari of that. We have to rise up in our capability to accept that Mahakali's swift, impetuous wrath as a blessing to take us further. So that's very thing. And just one other quick thing I wanted to mention, Shailaja, I was listening to you, I was fascinated with several of the examples. I think in Sri Aurobindo's case, in this Mahakali, he makes it very clear distinction between Kali and Mahakali. So this Mahakali is not black in appearance. It is gold. It's the golden light that is the Mahakali light. Mother and Sri Aurobindo both have made it very clear. It's the Kali of the vital plane, which is which has been given this form of black with skulls and things like that. So that's an important distinction when we are speaking of Mahakali force. So I thought I'll just add that point.